I really want people to understand that these shows are not being done by yours truly personally. It is done by the collective frequency that we're all on because we have the same idea and biorhythm connection, etc., with what we want to do with this reality, how we want to expand ourselves, how we want to go into balance, those kind of things. So this is the collective frequency. So if anyone caught that post on Facebook when I post this particular image, the title is Fusion. You see me put underneath calling all generators, capacitors, voltage regulators, and that's on the physical tense. On the spiritual tense, calling all time lords, all people who understand how to get messages like this across customs, meaning that the customs that everyone sets up in their mind is what determines, as we call it, the grid. It determines what they perceive. Even a person's avid into spiritual awakening or their path determines how they interpret all the things that they see while they're on that path.
Grand Rising.
Having a full spectrum path. We have a passion for transparency, if you may. And this passion in itself actually keeps us in a stage of persistently pursuing truth no matter what we may find. But that kind of gets me to today's disclaimer, which is about how when we're going into these three-dimensional realities and we're discovering what goes on in these dualistic worlds and these physical worlds, why would we ever get all bent out of shape and judgmental right or left if we find out there was some type of conflict or some type of confusion?
Grand Rising, Grand Rising.
Our ancestors,
Here for your wake and bake if you need a bud. A bud with benefits for your wake and bake. I was actually gonna roll up, hit my blunt a few times, and then actually work out.
But what I also wanted to talk about is are you in the palace?
I've been listening to Sevan Bomar like all weekend, so that's what's playing in the background if you're curious.
One of those rooms, those 500-600 bedroom houses, are you in one of those? So who I'm going to be discussing today is to you some direct person that has been looking out for you and calling you and seeing if you're okay. In 99% of the cases of people who are listening to this, the answer is no. That they make up a group that is the collective frequency known as the masses. So if you hear something today about your race, your color, your creed, your culture, your petri dish, do me a favor and ask yourself, is it really yours? Or same thing as if, like, let's say somebody talk about Barack Obama. Someone may think that that's just a direct blow at black people. Same thing on the opposite side. Someone talk about Queen of England. Some people think. But the reality really is that what has been created is these titles, and who holds these titles, who decide and choose what these titles, as long as you take them, how they function and what they do, is those who create.
I like the way this weed breaks up. I don't know what it is. I think it's something from Cresco, but I honestly don't know what it is exactly. But it has a nice sticky essence to it. It's not as dense as you would want your bud to be, but it definitely has some sticky icky. So that's good. Little sticky icky goes a long way.
Spiritually and physically, because of methods that have been used on this planet, a knowledge that's on this planet, and the person has become or fallen victim to it. So it should be very clear that this planet is billions of years old, and we're over here still trying to figure out if we had a past life or not. So there are beings who, all of those years, maybe chunks of them, 3,000-4,000 years versus your little 20-30 years per se, have been collecting that knowledge, just like you're collecting that knowledge right now. But because it does sum itself all up,
look what I got. A whole box of little leaves. Someone was nice enough to gift me a box of little leaves. How precious is that? I don't know how many's in here. Bruh, there's 30 leaves in here. That's look at that. You guys have no idea how many little leaves I use. Little leaves should be sponsoring me. as many low leaves as I buy. Specifically the dark ones.
The program that I'm going to discuss today, it has been running in multiple cultures during different periods of time. Okay?
We in there. I don't gotta go to the corner store for a minute.
It is a program or an ME.
This is a good gift. Box of little leaves is a great gift.
A three-dimensional environment with non-dimensional beings inside of it. Okay, because there are several different things that are taking place here all simultaneously, and when identifying those things, it becomes somewhat of a meditative mantra when removing yourself out of what I'll call the tin. Dr. Monroe was right about when he said, okay, now that you're in the binaural hemisync field, you're ready to leave the tin. And I'll explain to you the mystery of the tin today also. I want to talk about it very briefly also about karma-free knowledge, because of the realization that many times our actions when we're doing certain things with individuals may entail may entail karma if we're not watching what we're doing. And I want to use a different word beside karma, because a lot of people are starting to know there's no such thing as karma and this is an illusion and blah, blah, blah. Karma needs to be interpreted as when you sin, you receive. Every action, there's a reaction on some level or another. And you actually should enjoy this system. It's not something to actually be afraid of. And the reason is because it equals your results. So instead of using the word karma today, we're going to use the word results. Okay? So result-free knowledge is basically when you, or actions, is when you're giving the person the ability to accomplish whatever it is that you're so eloquently or facetiously or whatever speaking of. So what this means is that instead of giving it to them, it's like if I had this power coming from my hands, and then I put my hands and anointed and consecrated someone and gave them this power and ability, that's sorcery. Okay? So understand the difference, because what happens is you're transferring the energy.
Oh my God, there's a stem.
When actually utilizing your energy centers
There's
to
a big stemmy in here.
a person and not considering, and we're not saying that this is forbidden. What we're saying is this is when you get into the things that there is
Big
real
stemmy.
balances and things that need to be taken place.
All right.
To account for.
Had to remove that before it ruined everything.
You're spending your currency, so you need to take balance of where you're spending currency. As a farmer, you're planting your seeds, and this seed planting thing is very tough. That's why I say, man, the ground wouldn't wither forth for man, and he would toil and till the sweat of his brow. They're talking about our ideas more so than just the farmer planting seeds. But if you want to take it into that level, you farmer who knows how much work he's got to do, it's not going to, women farmers also, they're not going to sit there and throw some seeds into some dirt that is hard and packed, and they know that the seeds are not going to grow up. They just as soon as save their seeds. Or they have to dig deep into that hard ground and crack it open and get some soil movement and get down to different layers to get the minerals, okay? So these are things that make higher states of consciousness so simple, because when focusing just on those things,
Hi, friends.
you get these deep levels of introspection of what is exactly going on in your life, how you may be planting seeds on infertile soils, and thus every time it's time for your harvest, which happens every full moon, is you eating this slop or this mess that you put together, okay? Because if this is the system that we really want to occur, because when we're doing what we are balanced to do and supposed to be doing, then it just equals this continuous abundance, and you're out of here in no time. There's a full maximization of your energy because you begin to be all-pervading magnetic, okay? So that's another thing I want to tell people about. There's karma-free knowledge that you begin to deal with. This is an example of it, of how to apply exactly to individuals exactly what they need. They say it's better to teach a person how to fish than to actually catch the fish for them, or something of this nature. Basically, it's better to teach a person how to feed themselves than to just keep feeding them. Because when you do that, you develop a certain kind of relationship and it becomes pampering. So also remember, when we're going to talk about later on today, when we get into some of these religions, mainly one, you can imagine the level of vampiric activity, i.e. vampires, this is why they love to wear the cross a lot, going on because of the method in which it's being used. Nothing to do with the doctrine, okay? Because that's a whole other ballgame. But I want people to see very clearly with your micro-macro approach how you can just take short parts of what's being presented today, the message to be 1,000 times to grasp something different, just like last message, but you can keep getting into the message and actually extracting what you need that's synchronistic to the moment that you're dealing with. So, I've been explaining for the last, who knows how long. And that's the computation of the unbegotten, meaning that there's this space that we have a hard time entering, especially as more advanced beings, and it's called the unbegotten. And this is because even as advanced as you make on the planet, it becomes very difficult to start calibrating and calculating where you actually came from. And then in your works, you'll start seeing that you actually came from nothing. And since everything comes from something, according to even the highest states of knowledge here on the planet, then this becomes a meltdown in the mind. And so what I do is because these are like walls in my mind, and that's how I take them as. When I can't figure something out, I feel like it's a wall. So then I do the John Henry on the wall. I just start to chip away at it, and then I keep going with it. And every time I get some free space of thinking where I can say, okay, where was I at before? Oh yeah, the unbegotten. And then I'll just keep chipping away at that wall. So finally, it came to me in the deepest state because I was in a space with no science, and then all of a sudden it was like, bam, that's why you can't comprehend the unbegotten. Because in the stage that you're in the unbegotten, you have no senses, no chakras, okay? And what chakras are your actual attainments, or your jewels, or your worlds, or your marriages, your fusions that you put together over a long period on a timeline, right? Creating this lattice work, this geometry, these different shapes, these realities that you're going through, and then when you're done, boom, it goes right into your cosmic being as this chakra. And these become your senses. These become how you perceive and how you interact with each reality that you're going through, based on really what you had already gotten into before. Okay? Now, very early in the game did the geometry thing start being actual unhindered being encapsulated in some type of geometry, and we'll talk about that here in just a moment. But I just wanted to make it very clear that these days on the balance bridge, I'm not too keen on losing my chakras, and I'm not too keen on saying that I don't want to be in Zen, meaning that I'm actually in this simultaneous space of having all my senses and it also in Zen, and that's called alpha beta. Okay, I've gotten more of the scientific explanation of exactly what is occurring within the brain when it is able to perceive things that others don't actually see, while also being very alert and awake in the reality. So again, alpha beta. Why those in delta are actually sleep, because that is the frequency. So those in the now delta, or in the inverted pyramid, or in the womb of their own consciousness are actually sleep. And this is why they can't actually perceive the reality, because in their own brain doesn't even give off the signatures of one who would actually be perceiving the reality. And this is because they have to learn how to enter into alpha stages and feed the brain in the alpha stages. And to give you a physical example of what the alpha stage is that before a golfer is about right before the club, a professional golfer, the club touches the ball, right before it touches the ball, the brain spikes into an alpha stage, because that is the moment where that golfer is having to determine exactly how to hit that ball. And we're talking about the professionals, okay? The professional buckyballers. That's the process, okay? So this is also, I'm glad I started talking about this process, because I want to start to show you how to extract and to mine deep levels of knowledge from anything. For this reason, you won't have to really go that far, really mainly within yourself, to start extracting massive levels of knowledge. You don't even have to turn on the TV or turn on anything. If you just turn your cell phone, you can start your extraction. But this is what I'm calling mining your own. And the reason for this is because you do contain jewels within that many other forces are actually plundering right now. They can never get deep into your holy of holies, where the grand jewel itself is kept. But you have the ability to access that space in yourself. So what I want to do is I want to give you a system to where anywhere you go, anything you do, whatever's approaching you, you can see because you are aware and everything is transparent to you. You're not actually confused, so that way you have to begin. Okay? Because confusion and ignorance brings about judgment, because then you have to determine whether you should or you shouldn't. One who is not unclear about such things does not. Excuse me, I'm thinking about two things at one time, but I'm thinking about maybe. Okay, what maybe does is it's like this floating point, right? It doesn't actually say yes or no. Okay, so in this maybe state of frequency also, then this means you get a chance to pass right through the knowledge and the information and just consider the knowledge and information rather than making a judgment. And a judgment is more similar to if you're in lucid sleep and you try to lucid dream a little too hard, you wake up. If you're trying to get out of the body, especially during meditation, and you start to feel something, then you acknowledge that you felt something, you stop feeling something. And as I say on my Skype, that everything is there until you try to look at it. Because the moment that you do, you take these lasers, these beams, and then you start cutting all of this stuff up in the reality, right? Everything is clear by when you close your eyes. Like it looks like that, and then even there's an advanced stage where you project lights, and then you can create all sorts of different things, even in your own mind. But as of now, that blackness, that void, is still a good metaphor for what actually the stage of everything is. Okay? But then the moment you open your eyes and you become aware, then your calibration starts, your system and your processing goes on. And it says, first, where am I at? It has to know where it is. And then it starts to process information from there. Oh, that's this person, that's this person. And then the reality constructs itself so fast that you don't even see it. And this is why it's completely malleable when you get into frequencies that you can see. Okay? So just remember, chakras are your jewels. Some have jewels that are cracked. They have inclusions. Different things are going on with them, but they're still jewels nonetheless. So in every 10, sometimes we take a jewel and we remove it, and then we put a perfected jewel in. And that was why it was power to know the perfection of these different dimensions that we're actually in, meaning that the perfection of the demented state of mind gives you a reflection of the exact creation. So even the world being here and the sun being there is a huge metaphor again within itself, because this means that if the sun is over here, the only thing that could be here is the shadow. And this is why they say that the world doesn't give off its own light. It's not a sun, okay? But then the deeper level of this teaches that is actually the illusion, because the sun is really within. And then this starts to light you from within, i.e. the shining one, okay? So as we keep going, I'm now going to make my way to the board, but let me make sure. Yep, that's it. I got to how you extract knowledge. I'm about to show you, because I was on my own little mission here. Let me move the camera around the position where I need it to be. But I was on my own mission on finding what certain symbols meant on my keyboard. And this was only because, and it was about 4 or 5 days ago, I was creating something for the resistance, obviously, and different things that I was putting together. And then there was a key command, and I was pushing that key command, and it wasn't doing what I wanted it to do. And so I started thinking, well, maybe I'm pushing the wrong key command. Maybe I actually misread that that's not the shift. That's not the shift symbol, okay? And so what happened was that once I tried to Google really fast, what are all the key commands for the Mac as far as symbols are concerned. And then that's when it started. Immediately I was taken up on a course. And it was like, hey, check out the command symbol real quick though. Because just the other day, you were talking about that if Apple, of course, is the pentagram, this is because an apple inside has 5 seeds. When you cut it down the side, you'll see that there's 5 seeds. Most plants, many plants are actually probably all plants have 5 base nature in them. But the apple in particular was always used a deeper metaphor because when you cut it down the center, it bears a pentagram right in the center, okay? It's like a sand dollar, right? So what I started looking into really briefly was this command symbol and who's supposed to be in command. Like, why would they denote that this is the symbol of command? And if you could call it a rabbit hole, you could call it a rabbit hole, but that's what happened. All of a sudden, this advanced level of information about what exactly is taking place in this reality, who's responsible for doing it, and also how to unwind the mind and unbind the mind from what it has done. So that's today's message. And of course, we're going to get through this today as much as possible, and then anything that we don't get through, obviously, we'll follow up here in a second. So let me go ahead and load a picture here, because this is obviously your command symbol on an Apple keyboard, okay? And this symbol in particular actually comes from Scotland. It is a Viking symbol akin to a mark that, as a traveler or fisherman, when you would see this, you would know that the Vikings had been there, okay? And this is the beginning of a deeper level of knowledge about knots. Because it turns out that if you take a straight line or one, and then you make it three-dimensional, what you'll get to is you'll get to a two. I just want you to think about that in your mind, that if you take a straight line and then you made it three-dimensional, you will get a two. And then that would begin the tube of time, okay? That what time really is it stretches out like a tube or a web all over this space we're calling the astral plane, okay? So right away, you can start thinking about, well, is this, they talk about weaving, that there's this weaving that witches can do, as they say, or that there's this deep metaphor within the knot, or the Gordian knot, okay? Okay, so this is your command symbol on the Apple keyboard called a loop square. And right off, I mean, you can analogy just by itself. To loop a square would have to come after you circle a square. After you square a circle, then you can loop the square. And this is actually a process that I'm going to show you today has been occurring over thousands of years as the world is taken through different geometries. And the beings that are living there, different geometries mean different programs, different things going on, but all correlating to the specific geometry. And then when the person goes through that geometry, the next world, there'll generally be two geometries present in the world on the main level. Like I showed you today, I showed you the 5 and the 6, or the hexagram and the pentagram, and it's obvious that it's a popular geometry in use today, okay? Because they also contain the triangle, and it contains pretty much every other angle and shape, right? That's popular. But back in the day, before 5, there was 4, okay? And 4, or Thor, even, and someone commented that, hey, this looks Celtic. It is definitely Celtic, because they talk about Celtic knots, okay? That there was the knowledge, just like what we're dealing with today in regards to crossing through dimensions, going through planes, those kind of things, okay? And for those who want to get to this page, as you can see up there, it's loop square in Wikipedia, okay? And so this is a step-by-step, because it begins by, instead of reading this whole thing, first I just want you to see that there is a mention here of Gotland, Scotland, okay? And that you'll also see that it heavily connects to ancient things. And this is how I want to teach today, because I can get really deep into this, and some of this stuff we will. But I also want to let people know you don't have to have all of this pre-knowledge to examine this kind of stuff and to come up with the truth in it, right? And let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger. Those who are looking for how you do things, make things bigger, it's actually Command Plus, okay, on your keyboard if you're using countries for a long time, but it mainly traces back to God because it is the symbol used by the Vikings in order to mark or map areas that they've already been to, so that when they send others that are affiliated with them to those territories, that they can begin to follow a certain path that will lead them to certain things. And this is why I used to remark that the world is like a huge cloak and dagger. Once you understand how to read symbols, even at night at times, black lights show different symbols of places pointed certain, things pointing to certain places using certain symbolism. So the world is engulfed in a secret. Okay? And this is another thing, and then this is the camera back on me, that I want people to realize. Remember, we're just in the matrix today, so we're going to drive out of here when it's all over, but there's some things that need to get transmitted. And one of those things is that, excuse me, yeah, why don't I just use that, exactly. So one of those things is that I want people to understand that this knowledge, okay, has been hidden and kept secret, that this stuff is so potent to what it's capable of doing for running kingdoms, that if it's actually found out, then there's no more running any kingdom except for those who are still under the mind control in the program. Okay? So there is people who do know about this knowledge, but also know and work with this knowledge, but work with it in a sense of how it's going to benefit them. And this is one of the most important things that you have to understand with all this spiritual knowledge, is that I'm not looking into this knowledge to figure out what kind of sign, what kind of symbol that I can put down and all this stuff to make some money and all this. Like, everyone's looking for the word and all this kind of stuff. That's not what this is about. This is about getting untangled from the web. Okay? Because until then, you can't be a sovereign. All right? And that's why on the plaque in the Bohemian Grove, what does it say? Weave not thy webs here. Okay? Meaning, don't do this on the people that are here. But see, they're very well aware of this web weaving. Okay? So let's get back to how this works out from a logical level, because some people still may be like, okay, well, how does that all connect? All right, hold on real quick. Let me get to my notes here. And I want you to understand then that the loop square is similar to infinite recursion. Okay? It is very synonymous with that number 848 that we were talking about. That's a part of this whole recycling process or looping. Okay? Because if someone takes a point in your timeline where you're supposed to graduate and plugs it into a point in your timeline that you actually just start over again, then you keep starting over again and starting over again. And that's what the weavers of the web are capable of doing. Okay? And now, if you want to see the physical correspondence to this, it is now the internet. The internet can weave a web of truth that's really false, meaning that it can lead a person from one link to another link to another link to another link, and then by that time the person is confused because they don't have the eyes, meaning they don't actually have the ability to distinguish between truth and falsehood, meaning being able to separate the chaff from the wheat, meaning actually the ability to not judge, okay, because only then does it render its secrets. Because what happens is, for great soul, everything's great. So everything that you see is great when you're balanced. So when something's not true, then it has to come true to you. It may render falsehood to everyone else. To most people, it's just a symbol. It doesn't even make any difference. But to those who know truth, say, oh, this is the end of the command. But I am aware of who is bringing the command. But it's so simple. If you're speaking English or English, and your God is God by that name, Good, then why is it so hard to understand that then that may be the individuals or kingdoms or whatever you want to call it that are involved in usurping your consciousness? Okay? And now remember what I said earlier. I'm not talking about the citizens of the country, okay? Because this is how they feel about the citizens of the country. We'll go here. Second. Okay? This is the symbols of the country. This is the crest. Okay? And then you see it gets into the sheep. You see there's even a story here, because of the cross being there, that they are still a Christian state and have always been a Christian country, excuse me, because this is the place where Christianity was founded. Okay, this is the origins of the concepts of God, G-O-D, and his son, Jesus. Okay, and some people say, but no, this has been going on for thousands of years. How do you know? You weren't here. All of the knowledge has been rewritten for you to think it was thousands of years ago that something went on that just happened 300 or 400 years ago in certain cases. 1,000 years ago. Shoot. And when you're in no time and someone's weaving webs, they can plug you into another part of time for you to perceive that this stuff has been going on for a long time. But what is a long time to an immortal? Immortal doesn't work by time. So this just means that when time started, this is what was going on, because before then there was no time. So let's go to the next scene here, because some people are like, oh my goodness, no, you just didn't say that Christianity came from Scotland. I know the godless people are like, wow, my heritage. It's all twisted in people's mind right now, but we're going to untwist it, because those knots are difficult to deal with at times. So let's go here. Go back here. So realizing the loop square, the infinite loop, and then we'll go here to the Stora hammer stones. Okay? Because these stones actually give us the account of what later on by poetic means, excuse me, let me switch to that. Later on by poetic means, there you go, was made into the story of dying sons, saviors, devils, all of the drama that people love to hear, right? The story. They love the story, campfire tale, whether it's true or not. And in fact, the more animated that it gets, the better. Okay? So on the Stora hammer stone, though, what's going on is the actual real crucifixion process. And what is being used to do that is a symbol that I really want you to hone in on, which is that triple triangle. It looks like a triple triangle, okay? But originally this symbol was a triple knot, known as a Borromean knot. Give me just a quick second, so let me get this stuff up, but just take a good look at that, because the devil's there. You didn't see him or not. He's the one encouraging the whole thing. And again, all these are deeper metaphors, programs running, taken from other cultures and other places, but the same thing. There's even the river of Pharaoh, F-A-R-O, in Gotland. Why that same Pharaoh is P-H, the P-H Pharaoh, okay? Because what you'll start realizing is that as letters are being added to English, these are symbols that begin to deify themselves. That's why there was no J. Like there was no J before a certain time. Even when the name, they say the name Jehovah was introduced, impossible. There was no J. Jesus, there's another J there, but there was no J. You see, so this is the more evidence that these books, I'm telling you, somebody told me, oh, it's written by Shakespeare. I said, man, no, it's serious. There's another level of knowledge that shows it. I can show you today, they're probably right. Because the poet's probably right. W-R-I-T-E, okay? I'm going to show you today about right. Okay, this R-I-G-H-T, what's supposed to be right. Even, meaning what's supposed to be good, opposed to odd, and how the game is played. Okay, so let me go here to this. So you see the Stora Hammerstone, and we're going to come back to some of this stuff. I'm just showing it to you now so that when I start talking about things, it doesn't get confusing at all. So here, these are the Borromean rings, okay? And these are the same thing as what you were seeing with the triangles. But the triangles came next. This is the geometry of what is, this would be the symbol of the image, okay? And the reason is because this is